very highly respected, but in other types of Scottish accent, it's actually very low status. So it has its own subset within the UK, in my opinion. Do you know what I mean?
Perspectives on that for sure.
Yeah, we should definitely talk about it. It's very, very interesting. Anyway, we're live, everybody. Welcome to Brain Food Live on air on a cold, crisp, and rather nice day out there in the UK. It's like a beautiful blue skies, -1 or something. I believe some people are saying it's snowing in Tunbridge Wells. So it's starting to happen. Winter is here, but it's a nice winter, folks. Can't argue with it so far. Anyway, welcome to the show, everybody. It's episode 184. Brain Food Live on air. We're bringing it to you every Friday, no fail. We're going to keep going till the 23rd of December, would you believe, to the very bitter end, where we're going to do our year in review show on the 23rd, as late as that. So make sure you sign up to us. Yes, Adam, make a note. you need to give me an hour on the 23rd. Anyway, let's get on with it. Let's do some sound checks before we go any further. We always want to do this to make sure you can hear me okay. Folks in the on Crowdcast, if you can hear us okay, please do let me know. We need video and audio. If that's operating okay, let me know on the chat stream. We should be pumping this out into LinkedIn Live as well as Twitter, Facebook, and that's it really. So if you can hear me in those three places, let me know also in a comment below. So you can see whether that, so I can see that the things are operating well as we go. So yeah, seems like audio is working well, which is good stuff. Anyway, good to see Adam Gordon back in the saddle. It seems like a little while since you've been here, Adam. And I was just saying to Adam, doesn't he look good? Doesn't he look as if he's lost like 10 years in terms of his age? Do you want to quickly explain what you've done? Some plastic surgery, man? Like what's going on here?
Well, no, I had a haircut and shaved most of the beard off. I don't know why my appearance gets so much airtime. It happens on Brain Food, not just from you, but other people in the chat. And like, if Ivan Harrison's anywhere near, he's always got something to say about my appearance. But anyway, I've not been trying to look younger, but I guess that's it's not a bad thing.
No, I think it's a really good thing to be able to segue one way or the other. Sometimes you need to have like a bit more gravitas, you know, a little bit more, and that is age, that is maturity. There's no doubt like growing facial hair helps your power somewhat. But if you want to, you know, be a whippersnapper, whip it off. So there you go.
Well, look, I think actually that's an interesting point, and it kind of links into the subject that we're talking about on the about accents and things, because there's a point in your life where you don't need to do anything to try and look more mature, because you literally are. I think that's about our age, like mid-40s. I think that's the point where actually, yeah, you probably look as if you've got the stripes. You look as if you've got some experience.
Mm-hmm. That's it. And that's actually a topic for another show. Like how do you, like, some people look like preternaturally young, and you think, yeah, at some point that may not be great for them, because they don't seem as if they have the gravitas to be a leader of a business, for instance. And yet some people look older than they are, and you know, do they then give off a different image, which maybe you don't want in a certain so we are very ageist, we're very ist of every type. So we're going to try and uncover it, and this is the topic of the day, which is accent and social class bias, which I think particularly in the UK is very, very prominent. It's quite famous for it. We're probably the exemplars country, like globally, exemplars on how social class actually does kind of, we filter through in some way. So
other than India,
well, a different type of caste though. I mean, that's a slightly different, but it's broadly similar. It is a caste type of thing, and you know, it is a case where
even more pronounced though, even more pronounced than it is in the UK, I think.
I would say India, it would be a very interesting example, because there's also social class sort of layered on with the British Empire as well. So there's like almost two layers of caste sort of structures that might be interceding with each other. So we'll definitely do that show at some point. But yeah, we're talking about social class bias today, folks, and I hope people can tune into this and give us your thoughts as well, because I think whether you've been a beneficiary or a victim of this, then it would be just interesting to surface some of this stuff out. Anyway, we always want to thank our sponsors for this show, because this show cannot happen without our sponsors. Every week, Brain Food Live is sponsored by a great company that's doing wonderful things for the recruiting industry. And this week, I'm very pleased to announce it's a repeat sponsor. It is MetaView, a company that is there to basically improve your interview intelligence, a category that I'm a massive evangelist for this year. I think it's really, really important. And I think it's going to have the sort of thing that will be, a step change improvement in terms of how companies recruit, particularly improving quality of hire. But why don't I get the founder of the company to tell us all about it? There's no point in me trying to tell you the story of MetaView, because we've got CEO Sahil Majos here, who's going to come on. He's a previous guest of Brain Food, so you should know him. But he's going to come on and tell us all about his amazing products. So hopefully Sahil's here, and he could give us the news. I'm quite excited to see what kind of brand action he's going to give us. Oh, he's just got a hoodie on. Sahil, come on.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I was hoping for a tattoo or something.
Yeah. I was laughing as you were talking about gravitas, and then I turn up wearing a hoodie. And I did get confused when someone predicted I was 25 the other day. So yeah, I've got a few more years to earn those stripes, I guess.
That's actually really interesting, Sahil, because as a founder of a business, is it better to be slightly older or younger? Probably at some point, some age might help, right? I mean,
for sure. And just to be clear, someone predicted I was 25. I am not 25, it turns out, but that was their prediction anyway.
Right. Yeah. You're 30, right?
High up a bit.
All right. Let's declare it
70.
You're not allowed to ask that in an interview, Hung. You should know that. That's right. You MetaView in your interviews.
There would be a MetaView flag saying illegal, which actually would be an interesting product. If you kept on saying stuff that was like, actually, this is not allowed, then maybe you get a pop-up to say, no, you can't do. But Sahil, tell us about the product, man. What is MetaView? Who should care about it? Why is it important?
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for having me on, and obviously delighted to sponsor. So MetaView is the leading interview intelligence platform, really focused on increasing quality and reducing bias in interviews. So that's for us what it boils down to. And really for us, actually, quality or bias is a subset of quality, right? Biases are shortcuts towards to help you make decisions when you don't have the evidence, but it's a whole lot better if you actually have the evidence. And that's what we help with. So we record and transcribe interviews seamlessly, then provide insights to interviewers, tools for recruiters, and evidence for hiring managers to really level up this sort of the last black hole in the recruiting process, which is the interviews, these really dense, high signal conversations that are had between hiring teams and candidates. So yeah, sort of the evidence, the impact we have really boils down to time to offer. So a lot of the time you can improve your time to offer. We have customers who improve their time to offer by up to 28 to 30% because they can weed out the candidates that aren't a fit more quickly. They have more high quality interviewers in their team, so they can schedule candidates more quickly as well. Offer acceptance rate goes up by 16% because the experience is just that much better when interviewers are confident, and especially when hiring managers feel like they have enough evidence with which to make a decision, instead of getting into this endless cycle of, oh, let's see a few more candidates because I'm not sure about this one. When you actually have the evidence at your fingertips, it makes a massive difference.
Yeah, that's what immediately struck me when you said it was actually quicker to offer, because you actually have more information. And where hiring managers struggled and they're sitting on something, it's like there's no more information coming. You've had the interview, so giving an extra couple of days thinking about it doesn't help. And in the end, that ends up that offer not happening, and back comes the recruiter with more candidates. So supply the evidence to the hiring managers, and they're able to then execute a decision on it. So absolutely. So how can they check out MetaView, Sahil? Where they know about it and whatnot?
Yeah, best place to go is our website. So it's metaview.ai. There's a bunch of resources on there as well. You can check out, whether it's to learn about the product or learn about how we think about, I guess, these challenges around hiring great folks in tech, especially. And you can head over there. You can get started right away, or you can get in touch with a member of the team. You can also email me. I'm on SM, so that's the letter S, the letter M, @metaview.ai if you want to get in touch, and we'd be happy to jam with folks in the community and show them the product and get their perspectives.
Fantastic. Go ahead and share your details in the chat stream there, Sile, and I'm sure the folks who are watching this will get in touch. Anyway, great to see. Sorry, Adam, you're going to say something?
Can I ask Sile a question, actually?
Oh.
So I think you called your company MetaView before Facebook called it, changed its topco to Meta.
Yeah.
Just like interesting brand question. Did that ever make you think, am I doing the right thing? Or like, what was the question? What was the questions that you asked yourselves at that point?
When Facebook changed to Meta?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely a sort of a topic of conversation in the company. But we haven't really seen it filter through. As we hear sort of the odd sort of observation now and then from a customer, or like, oh, when we first started talking to you, we thought you were something to do with Facebook. So we don't know how sort of profligate this is, but it doesn't feel like it's slowing us down any, put it that way.
Yeah. And the whole concept of like the metaverse is something that, is people are talking about a lot more, of course.
Yeah. I mean, there's a bunch of tools out there. We work a lot with a lot of sort of, I would say, pretty high performing tech companies, and you get other products out there like companies like Metabase. So this concept, MetaView is a portmanteau of metadata and interview, right? That's why we gave it the name. And I think there's a decent level of understanding that that's what we're aiming for. But no, but sometimes we do have to explain that, nothing to do with Meta, the company, and also nothing to do with the metaverse, much more to do with the data, the sort of this ambient data that you're losing in your recruiting process at the moment, specifically in your interviews.
That's it.
Great use of portmanteau. I think I wouldn't have remembered that's what it was called, but Hung's a big scholar of words, and he would have known that.
I actually did know that, and I was about to mention, hey, a fellow person that knows how to use the word portmanteau. Anyway, listen, we've got to get on with the show. So, Sile, great to see you, man. Let's connect again. Feel free to hang around if you're interested in this topic, by the way. I think it's one that actually kind of is aligned a little bit in terms of, how accents are captured. Like when you're interviewing someone, you can actually pick this. It's a bias. It's clearly you can pick up. So
I don't want I want to stay with my lane a bit, but completely, right? Because if you think about what people make their decisions from interviews based on now, it's a lot on those feelings, and that might be like memories of how they came across as opposed to how they actually answered the question, what they actually said. So super relevant.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. Okay, Sal, listen, we'll see you in the chat, but thanks so much for dropping the message, and we'll chat again soon, man.
Thanks so much, folks. Enjoy.
Cool. I'm pleased you mangled his name as well, man. I always mangle it also. I think it's called Sile, but I'm terrible with kind of Irish names, really.
How do you know I mangled it if you can't do it?
I know you definitely mangled it. Right, listen, we don't actually have time to review the newsletter. We have to bring people in. So let's go directly with this topic. We are going to go. I tell you what, Nick Court is coming on because he's the one that inspired this by a blog post that he wrote. And I thought, you know what, that's something definitely we need to be talking about. Ashley Wallace, who I had the pleasure of meeting a couple of weeks ago, she's joining us. Mel Hayes, of course. Let's have a look, Mel. Where are you? There you go. Let's bring her on. And we should have John Rose here, the legend that is John. Let's have a go. Okay, we've got some people on screen already. So, Nick, great to see you. Can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Hey, I'm Nick Court. I'm the CEO of the People Experience Hub. So we are a employee feedback platform. So data and insights around how people feel at work and what's going on in the workplace.
Fantastic stuff. And we have Ashley here. Ashley Wallace, great to see you, Ashley. How have you been? Ashley, would you like to introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Yeah, I'm Ashley. I work for Papercup AI, a small startup, and leading their recruitment.
Fantastic stuff. And we have Mel Hayes here as well. Great to see you, Mel. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I enjoyed the first part and loving your jumper, Adam.
Thank you.
Just doing it for your attention. But anyway, Mel, who are you? What it is you do?
Hi, everyone. I'm Melanie Hayes. I am the Chief People Officer at Nash Squared, and we are a half technology recruitment organisation, some brands that sit under there like Harvey Nash, and then half a technology solutions business, so Nash Tech, which is, we have 2,000 developers in Vietnam, and my cameras just seems to have moved, so give me a second.
2,000 developers, did you just say?
Yes.
Wow.
Not just a recruiting business.
I had no
Serious
idea.
business. I had no idea either, and I might be going to Vietnam in January actually, so I'll pop in and say hi to all of those devs.
So we've got Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh, and Da Nang.
Amazing. I think I'll probably go to Ho Chi Minh. All right, listen, we've got John Rose here as well. John, great to see you, sir.
And yourself, Adam. How are you doing?
Can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Yeah, John Rose. I'm working with Volvo Cars out of Sweden, but I'm based up in the Pennine district of Greater North of England. Here, and I'm sourcing work, building out the sourcing team with Linus and some great people over in Volvo Cars.
Fantastic stuff. Folks, connect with all of our friends on the screen, on the chat stream. We just shared all their LinkedIn's there. Right, let's talk about this topic, social, class, and accent bias. You're all here because you've either piped up or we've had some sort of drunken conversation, Ashley, or I've seen a post that, somebody has talked about. So this is something that we've all kind of experienced. Can we just share one experience that you have where you have felt, your accent or the class sort of signal that you gave actually was pejorative in a career context? So personal examples, just so we can get a flavor as to what actually might be occurring out there. So Nick, why don't we go with you to kick off with? Have you had any personal experience of this?
Oh, loads. So I guess a good example would be for me. I mean, I grew up on benefits and joined a retailer working in a warehouse and worked my way up. And the minute I got to any kind of junior management position, super uncomfortable in a tie, super uncomfortable in a shirt, didn't like it. Getting pulled in the office to be told, put your shirt on, put your tie on, and all of that stuff. And actually then being told that I'd been, I didn't have the look and the feel that they wanted for a role that I'd actually been doing for nearly a year. And they gave it to a grad for the reason was it's got a different background to you. Absolutely, categorically just told me that. Comes from a different background, comes across better than you do. He's a bit sharper in his look, and that was it.
Wow, that's devastating.
Sorry,
wow.
what role was that, Nick?
It was an industrial relations role. So perversely, I came from a trade union background, and then I ended up doing the trade union stuff for the company where I would do negotiations and pay talks and all of that kind of stuff. When the role came up, it wasn't for me.
They wanted somebody posher for an industrial relations job.
Yes.
Is that what? That's the summary of that.
Yeah, company fit.
Seems odd.
In a strange way, though, I'm actually impressed that they told you that, because how many times does that decision get made and there's no feedback at all? I mean, obviously these days you can't even give that feedback, but that type of decision making is still happening where face don't fit, or we have a particular image we wanted to deploy to this, and you know what? That's not you. And by the way, on the clothing and the appearance side, I felt this very keenly actually when I first came down to London to work. I did not know how to wear a suit, for instance. There are certain ways in which you're meant to do your buttons up. There's certain sort of styles of suit you need to be wearing. Certain things of all those types of things you just don't know. And you think there's other people that have a different type of lifestyle. They've got parents that can help. They've got people around them that can give them this type of, sense of fitting. Then ultimately that gives you that sort of signal that you belong. And that's what we're kind of teasing around here. There's lots of people out there that have not had the experience or the access to the resources. And so they get screened out, not for their ability to do the job, but because they're not the right fit for social class.
Funny story though. It might not be a funny story. I think it's funny. We were all asked to sign up to company Twitter accounts so that we could shout about the company on Twitter, as Twitter was really taking off. And I set my handle up as Scruffy Nick, and I got called in the office for that as well. So
not the right fit. Yeah, not the right fit, sir. Ashley, let's go to you with this. Have you any direct experience of, because you're from kind of similar part of the world as me, you've kind of moved into different sort of parts of the UK. Have you ever encountered any kind of bias of this type? And if so, is there an example that's conspicuous in your mind?
I think for me, so I moved to London just as Geordie Shore came out, unfortunately. And that was a really unfortunate time. But funny enough, I never thought I had an accent because in Newcastle, I never spoke slang. So when I moved to London, you can imagine all of like the jokes, the words. People were saying words that like they'd made up on Geordie Shore that you've never heard before. And you would get like the odd comment that would come across you, like, somebody once referred to me as like a lady of the night once, which is a really like insulting thing to say.
A prostitute.
Yeah, basically that's what a lady of the night is. Like just because of the accent, they like related it to that because of Geordie Shore. Like I've had like random comments, but in general, like I think it's probably been more positive than negative, but maybe that's because I'm not too like fussed by it. I'm quite proud of my accent. So when people make the odd joke and comment, I've kind of always kind of like brushed it off. But in the working environment, I'd say, especially when I worked on contracts for the government, that's probably why when you would like notice it the most. But from a candidate side of things, it used to be quite positive because everybody, I don't know if you've seen the sketch of like Jason Mumford, where he does this thing where they put call centers in the Northeast and that it's impossible to be angry with anybody from Newcastle because when someone's really angry with you, like, oh no, oh really? And it's like the accent kind of cheers you up. So from a candidate and a work side of things in recruitment, it's always been quite positive, but yeah, odd comments in the working environment, but nothing too harsh really.
Do you know what's really interesting here is that certain accents, like regional accents in the UK at least, we apply values to them, and they're not always negative, as you say. I think post Ant and Dec, I think basically people from the Northeast, particularly Geordies, are kind of like, oh yeah, cool. But there's other accents that for whatever reason are really denigrated. For example, you're from Midlands, West Midlands, Birmingham. That you get hammered for that, or it's perceived to be, a dumb accent, a slow accent, etc., etc. And there isn't like an obvious exemplar on TV, apart from Jasper Carrott back in the day. That's kind of carrying the flag. So we have these kind of regional accents. We apply pretty random sort of values to them, and if you're growing up in those places and speaking that way, then suddenly you might have like this paddle in the water that's causing you long-term career friction because of the way you speak. So yeah, it's a difficult one. Go to you, Mel. What are your thoughts on this? Have you got any experience of this type of accent or social class bias?
Yeah, absolutely. I moved to London 21 years ago. I was obviously only 12. And I used to get lots of questions because I have a Midlands accent, and it's an accent that, for those people who are not from the UK, it's kind of a mix of a Birmingham and a Manchester and a Liverpudlian accent. It's smack in the middle. And I used to get comments around my education. I was not progressed for roles because of my accent, and actually it was me that posted the HBR article on Twitter because I was just amazed when I was listening that was still a thing, because I thought we're used to seeing more regional accents on TV because 20 years ago you used to only have the soft English accent on TV, and I really think lots of people made judgments that I actually did spend a large part of my time softening my accent, and now I don't care. I'm kind of like, I have a strong accent. I think that gives me my own kind of unique piece.
Well, here's the thing. Like when people have to adopt or moderate their accent, like what does that do to you psychologically? How does that kind of change your own sense of identity? If you feel, the way in which I speak isn't good enough for this whatever thing I'm trying to do, and you've had to then sort of change this around. So it's very difficult. I've definitely changed my accent. I mean, I remember coming down to London, people didn't understand what the hell I was saying. So there was actually a practical impediment to this.
Well, I get the opposite when I go home now.
It's like, so anyway, it's interesting how you do it. And in fact, we'll talk about software as well. I don't know whether anybody saw this, but there was a really, really interesting piece of software that is there to try and change people's accent on contact centers. And it's so they've outsourced these contact centers, I think, to different parts of the world. everyone knows that you react very differently to people who speak in a English in an accent that is non-native. And in fact, we're very, very prejudicial in this way. And what sort of one company's done is basically enable a non-native English speaker to sound like a native English speaker, even to the point of applying a native English accent to someone who is a non-native English speaker. And on the sell here is to say, oh, we're eliminating prejudice because, you know, all of these people are still delivering great service, et cetera, et cetera. I think, yes, that's true. But on the other hand, you're thinking, wow, are you also now like leaning into the prejudice by saying only one way of speaking is okay? And these are the people who are speaking perfectly legible and understandable English. You know, for some reason, they've had to use a machine to change the way in which they speak to address this customer audience. So some big ethical issues and challenges to go through here. Okay, John, final one to you. You've always had this like mega strong accent, mate. I hope you don't mind me saying.
Hell no.
Ever since I met you, like there's no pretense. So I'd be interested to know how you've encountered this. I mean, again, I hope you don't mind me saying, but you're also a veteran of the space, so you've seen it over the years, so to speak. What's your experience? Has it changed any way? Is it positive, more positive or negative? Your thoughts on accent bias in recruiting?
I think when I first came into the industry 29 years ago, there was a definite demarcation. If you wanted to work blue collar, you had to have a blue collar voice. If you wanted to work white collar, you had to have a white collar voice. And that's in terms and expressions in the way you were. If you wanted to work executive search, there was a cat in hell's chance of me ever working executive search because I wasn't posh enough. Harvey Nichol, people like that, they interviewed me. They said, we'd love to get you in, but accent doesn't quite go. And I said, but I worked with the royal family for 5 years. If it was good enough for them, sure as hell should be good enough for you. And they said, yeah, but it's the customers that's the problem. So there is a bias. There is that whether it's conscious or unconscious bias in the language and the terminology. And fortunately enough, I've worked in different parts of the world, and there's a bias for the English language, but also in those with English accents, there's also ones that are biased against the English accent, the English language, and that's in the US. If you go to Australia and you speak English, then you better be a good runner, because look at that side, because it's not necessarily favourable. But again, it's something you do, and I think they take pity on you if you're from the north of England compared to London or whatever, because they have this idea of you're oppressed up north, therefore we like you in Australia, and that, whether you're in Brisbane or over in Perth or Adelaide, whatever.
Well, here's what's interesting. I mean, Max has mentioned in the comments there is actually everyone sounds British to him. Max, no one understands where you're from. I think he's French, like, but somehow where are you from? No one knows. But anyway, he's one of these like kind of internationalists. But people from outside don't understand, and actually everyone sounds British, quote unquote, and that actually is a very highly elevated language, international status wise. So you compare how English is spoken in different parts of the world, most people would rank, yes, the British accent, quote unquote, would be the number one. Whereas within our sort of milieu here, within Britain, there's also a hierarchy of accents in our sort of world also. Interesting you mentioned exec search saying, hey, regional accents no bueno. I think straight away that struck me as, yes, that's true. Like if you're working for I say elite, but you know, exactly the elite search type functions, it seems to be that is where you are going to get more RP English, received pronunciation. Education is all through a certain type. You know, the journey that person's been from and typically has to start from is in that sort of rarefied space. Adam, we haven't actually come to you, but I want to leave you to the last because you've actually got something interesting to say on this. Because not only coming from Scotland, we talked earlier before, Scotland might have its own kind of different milieu, but you've also gone through a kind of a public boarding school and stuff like this. So you've encountered people with different sort of ways of speaking and so on. What's your commentary on this topic, social accent, sort of accent bias and social class bias?
I've got a lot of comments on it. My personal experience is that I've never fitted in anywhere as a result of my accent. So in England, I'm considered Scottish, and in Scotland, I'm considered posh. And you know, I actually grew up in the south of England. Went to school just outside London. Grew up there, and in the playground, kids would come over to me and go, "Ooh, where's your combine harvester?" And I would go, "Yeah, I'm just not from the southwest, mate." Anyway, that's what happened. And then I'd go home and I'd talk with and my accent completely changed at school, and I sounded pretty much English at school. And then I'd go home, and my dad, who was very Scottish, I'd have a different accent at home, and I would sound different in 2 different parts of the day. But I agree with everything that everybody said. I totally understand it all, and I'm not sure how much we can change human behavior on this. But one thing I should say about London is, and I was really interested in what both Ashley and Mel said in particular. I think, and you, Hung, actually. I mean, London is now, and it wasn't when I started working, but it certainly is now, probably about the most diverse city in the world, or certainly one of them. And as a result, I really suspect that accent becomes less and less important, does it? I would certainly hope that would be the case. The exec search thing, totally get that. I spent 4 years at Norman Broadbent, and almost everybody went to a private school and was posh. And it's and that definitely still exists. People that work blue collar do sound more local, shall we say? And people who work white collar tend to sound a bit more neutral. And I think that is still the case. But I know that Mel's done a lot of work around social mobility and things like that at her organization. And I think that smart companies do appreciate they need to go and be quite active about how they make changes in this area.
I think if I can just add, onto that, Adam. That's why I was really surprised when I read that it was an HBR article about accent and people being held back in Korea because of it, and social class. I get that there's still challenges around social class, and we need to do a lot more work. But I just was completely shocked about the accent piece, because I just didn't think it was a thing now. But maybe that's just because I am predominantly sat in London, but we have offices all over the UK, or maybe I'm just not hiring in those companies.
At the end of the day, this is like in-group bias. And Adam, we'll get to your point, like, what can we do about it? Because a lot of it, I think, is like innate in human beings, that we just prefer to be around people that are like us or similar to us. That's, I think, a very instinctive thing. Simply as a risk assessment, threat assessment, this person looks and sounds like me, therefore chances are they're not my enemy. That's just the basic level of human evolution. So yes, the way in which we speak might be difficult, but perhaps using the London context, like, the greater diversity of accents we're exposed to, the less threatening each individual accent seems to be, because we simply hear more, necessarily need to direct experience of something different. If you want to, a lot of the ways in which people speak are also attached, unfortunately, to like regional stereotypes. You talk about the farmers stuff in the Southwest, or you say, people from Liverpool, maybe they're perceived to be, scallywags and whatever, but you're going to meet a few people that aren't that way, that are speaking this way, but aren't that way. And that's going to hopefully eviscerate the prejudice that you have. So perhaps diversity of experience and team is one of the ways to do it. London might have an advantage on that because there's more people. But as I'd be interested to know whether, Mel, you've got any examples where you've tried to, I guess, create more diversity within the business in order to try and like eliminate those biases by exposure to others, like the testing it against direct experience.
I think the only way that you can make that shift is because the hiring managers have got to kind of buy into it. And sometimes the challenge of hiring helps you to trigger it faster. I remember, and I'm sure that the MD of that business won't mind me saying this, but when I joined Nash Squared, Harvey Nash Group as it was at the time, going into the London office and it looking like I walked into an advert from Ralph Lauren. Everybody looked the same. Everybody spoke the same. And 2.5 years later, you go now and it's an entirely different business. But that has been down to the managers actually really thinking about hiring for the right skills and creating an environment that is addressing the different needs of different people, right? But so most of the time your managers are your problem. It comes down to the comment you were making earlier. I remember there was a time I used to say, oh, if you supported the same football team as me, then I enjoyed the chat with you, and of course you're a man, I'll hire you. It's the same thing that happened with gender issues.
I think what I also found was when I first came out of the military and then went into the Civvy Street side of things, I actually had to go down to Lockheed Martin down in Portsmouth, and I walked into the IBM building. Now, I'd been wearing a uniform for 23 plus years, and I did not want to be a conformist, a uniformist. So I had a nice sports jacket on, a nice tie, bright tie, and then I walked into this IBM building, and they all spoke with a southern, posh, neutral accent, but they all dressed the same: pinstripe suit, white shirt, dark blue tie. And I walked in there, and the receptionist said, "You won't fit here, mate." And I said, "Where are you from?" He says, "I'm from up north as well." He says, "You won't fit here." He says, "You stand out like a sore thumb." And I thought, great, that's what I want to do in my job. And that's what ended up being a benefit to me. So it has got nuances that can be beneficial as well as being a disadvantage on the language side.
I mean, it's interesting because I mean, what you're talking about here is something called social dominance theory. And when you talk about class, so it's away from accents for a minute, but you talk about working class, middle class, upper class. Social dominance theory kicks in at each level. And what it does is it says difference is a threat. Difference is a threat to our standard and our norm within this group. And therefore what we crave is assimilation. What we crave, and therefore what we value is assimilation. So what we do is, class isn't a protected characteristic, but it's only one of the characteristics that will change. You don't find working class CEOs because by definition they're middle class by the time they're CEOs. You don't find working class board people because by definition they're now middle class, because middle class is about wealth and job title and all the rest of it. So social dominance protects class, and what it does is it says dress like this, speak like this, sound like this. And then if you look at something like where do people come from into these roles, and you see that class system flowing through. So if you think about stuff like universities and you think about organizations in London, office space, typically middle class. So what they crave is, and what they ask of people is, stand on your own 2 feet. You can be a rock star. You can do this. You can achieve this. If you work hard, you can do anything and be anything you want to be. Whereas working class values are, we'll do this together, strive towards a common goal, collaborate. And if you look at what organizations want at the moment, I mean, we're seeing it from our surveys all the time. CEOs are saying, how do I drive up collaboration? How do I drive up interdepartmental trust? How do I get diversity in? And when we say something like, you're going to have to ditch some of those middle class values that you've got, it's a real shock to them that they've even got them. They don't know they've got them. And then you talk about the business case. I think, Mel, you said something.
Can I interrupt, Nick? Do you actually use the term middle class values? Do you say this to them?
Yeah. I mean, there's loads of research around middle class values and what they are. And
Nick, my dad grew up very, very much working class. He progressed in his career and became the CEO of a stock market listed business. He never changed his working class values, although interestingly, to get ahead, at one point, he was prepped for what he needed to do. And he needed to do 4 things. One of them was to do with Harvard. One of them was to do with his kids needed to be in the right school. And he said, what's the right school? To which he was presented with a list of 15 schools. And that's the reason I ended up going to boarding school, was actually because of that. I don't think that kind of thing happens so much anymore. Anyway, my point is more so that, like, I don't believe somebody is a class because of the job they do or the salary they earn. Maybe by the time they've retired, they've kind of shifted class, but that doesn't necessarily mean their values have changed.
But we ask people to change their values. And I think Mel said something about, Mel, you were talking about accent and the sound. And there's 2 bits of really good research. There's one from 2014, which was called The Price of the Ticket of Social Mobility. by Friedman. And then the other one was a guy called Anthony Manstead from Cardiff University, who did the psychology of social class. And what they both found was those small sacrifices you make when you make a change to your personal situation, your accent, your dress, your values, any small change, doesn't have to be a big change, a small change. What that does is it means I don't fit in here and I don't fit in fully back where I came from. Feelings of isolation, losing networks, mental health problems, lower self, life satisfaction are the things that come out of those sacrifices. Yeah. So holding on to your values is really important, but you can have a fight.
That's really interesting. I don't want to get sidetracked into this because this is actually, it's such a deep topic. I mean, Nick, I'm really pleased you've actually introduced it because it does dive into the, I mean, I hadn't even thought about the social price that you pay for social mobility. Like we promote social mobility as something positive. I think do we all think social mobility is a good thing? I think 99.9% of the people are going to say, yes, it is. But if you do move from your class from which your parents and your friends are from, there is a distance from them. And your ability to interact with them in going forward will change. They know it and you know it. So that's definitely a trade-off. And Adam, I'll let you say your piece, but I think there's a trade-off there, and that's something maybe something we've got to talk about at another point. But Adam, go ahead on one more point on this.
Just going to make a really subtle point around when we talk about social mobility. We are inevitably talking about upward mobility, right? And I mean upward in the classic like social hierarchy kind of sense. We're talking about people going from being poverty to working class to middle class. We're talking about upward mobility, aren't we? When we talk about that.
Yeah. At no point was anybody determined to go down in social hierarchy, social class.
I think it's just not necessarily the most accurate term for what we're describing is really what I mean though. When we talk about social mobility, it's more specific than that, what we're meaning.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're not going to solve it in the course of a single conversation here today, but I think we are kind of aware. We're probably all kind of have moved in that direction, to be fair. You know, let's say we've all come from a certain working class background or wherever it is. It's part of the reason why you've been selected on the show. And not that I've looked into your backgrounds or anything. Oh, she went for a comprehensive. No, I didn't do that. But it's more like, okay, these people speak with an accent. I'm guessing that's because you might have been the first generation or second generation to go to university or whatever it is. So we've all moved, and inevitably we're in that middle class tranche at this point. I think the point that Nick's making is that you're going to have to develop the values and the accoutrements of middle class life in order to fit in with the new reality you're in. Otherwise, you'd be constantly reminded of the fact that, oh, you're not part of us. So there's this need to assimilate and belong. Go ahead, Emma.
I was just going to add to that, though. Is there not something about, because I come from a working class family and background, and actually my CEO does, and she's quite open about it. And I think, is there something about being open about your own background? I absolutely get, Nick, what you're saying. And at first I was like, no, I don't agree. And then I was just reflecting on some of the comments you were making as you were talking through it. I think it's okay to come from a working class background and move yourself in terms of your career and your steps, but actually not hiding the fact. I felt when I moved to London that I had to hide my accent and soften my accent. And I'm amazed that people still have to do that, because I think the world has moved on incredibly in 20 odd years. So, but I do think we should be less afraid to talk about, how you might have grown up.
I mean, here's some bias in me. I've actually got, this is immediate bias. I've got more admiration for people who have progressed in their careers like you have, Mel, from somebody from a working class background to be doing the job you're doing in a publicly listed company, or for the person that's become CEO of a big company who's come from a working class background, than I am the people who went to Eton and Oxford. I've just got much more admiration for they've made bigger progression. Simple as that.
Don't you also think, though, one of the things that benefits, when we look at the present day working practices of remote working and distributed working and team and the hybrid system, it's removing the accent influences and the biases from the process, because people now can be anywhere in the world. And I'm lucky enough to have worked many places, many countries in the world, and I found those that integrate into and embrace the local environment in which they're in. They're not devaluing their values and where they've come from. They're actually making it more comfortable for others to accept them and to engage with them and interact with them.
Yeah. I think that there's two things you mentioned, John, which are really fair. Firstly, I don't think assimilation is necessarily a problem. I think it's a recognition, let's say, of respect that you've gone to a certain place. If I was to move to a different country or whatnot, then yes, I'm going to learn the language. Yes, I'm going to eat the local food. That's absolutely something I would insist on doing for myself. But it's not about forgetting your past either. It's those two things I don't think are on tension. Actually, Alan Walker, well done on mentioning this. Had mentioned the issue of remote. Does remote help with this issue? So we've talked about, hey, you could expose people to more diverse accent types. That's going to help reduce the prejudice people might have. Ashley, you mentioned this right from the beginning, the Jersey Shore thing, positive and negative. Yeah, we need to hear it more, see it more. Secondly, but does remote actually help? In other words, people are a little bit more distant remote. Are you going to be less judgmental because maybe more of the communication is actually now on email or written down rather than spoken and oral? What are your thoughts on the impact of remote on this particular issue of bias? Better or worse if we were living in a remote world? Ashley?
I think it's better, and I think the reason for it being better. So I work within tech. So within tech recruitment, we sponsor visas from around the world. So you tend to find that bias towards accents are a lot less across the UK. So it kind of removes a lot of bias in general. So I think remote is better because it opens your eyes up to different backgrounds and different people in different class, not just different classes, but different countries, in particularly for us as well. I think I probably don't see it as much as everybody else has kind of seen it as well, because I've never really worked across like construction or anything like that. So I do think it brings people together a bit more, and I think people are a bit more open around that. But again, I struggle because I haven't really seen a lot of negativity really in the workplace with it.
Yeah, I think thanks for this, Ashley. Remote, I think, probably helps in a way, because maybe the need to have a solid group is actually lesser because you don't have to spend that amount of time with people. I think when you're working in an office and it's very much, all right, we're hiring someone into our office, this person is sitting next to me for the next however many sort of hours per week, per month, then suddenly our kind of a selection criteria actually does increase. And that includes a lot of prejudicial stuff like, can I get on with him? Can I stand to be in the same room as this person for 40 hours a week? A lot of that coming from the accent, coming from social behavior.
I guess I've got a question here, which is like, if I don't know, 70% of the UK workforce is deskless, so they're working in retail and manufacturing, in construction, in supply chain, which are predominantly working class roles, then the argument about remote work is a middle class conversation by default.
I've got an aligned question with that, which also is, and in fact, this probably is a question for you, Hung, rather than anybody else here, and that is that there must be a hierarchy of biases. And what I mean by that is what you said about like the concept of mirroring other people, and like, this person is like me, therefore I've got more immediate trust or whatever it is. And I think that in terms of a hierarchy of biases, I think that ethnicity is probably more significant than accent. And I think gender is possibly more significant than accent as well. And then there's things like beauty bias and lots of others, like what's the clothes somebody's wearing. And, Mel walked into Ralph Lauren advert in the office, and that's immediate. So I do. The question for you, Hung, I guess, is like, do you think ethnicity? Do you agree with me? That's right.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. There's different hierarchies, definitely. Like certain, and that's actually reflected on our mitigation strategies. Like our attempts to be more inclusive. For instance, there is a hierarchy of things that we care about more than others, and where we spent more time doing. And that's also contextual, by the way. In different countries, different regions, you shuffle the hierarchies accordingly. But yeah, I mean, I guess if you're asking a personal question, have I encountered, let's say, racism in more so than accentism, if you will? I would say probably equal measures, actually. And not to a large degree, as far as I'm aware. I definitely am not like a major victim of any of this. I think I've had the good fortune of navigating the world so far without having an egregious scenario, the terrible situations that people might find themselves in. But yeah, there's certain times when definitely the way in which I spoke, I think vetoed me scenarios. I knew that, they knew that, and it was like, okay, that's how it goes. And same with race, that's also the case. But there's a moment of outrage, there's a moment of injustice, but then you come back and you think, hang on, do you want to belong to an organization that has these kind of beliefs? And I never had that urge. I was very quick to say, okay, listen, mate, if you won't have me in there, then see you later, I'm off. I wasn't particularly had a huge objective to enter groups. And that's probably because I bounced around a lot when I was very young, so I was always got used to being an outsider, to be fair. So for me, being in group is actually quite an unusual experience. I feel that it's more normal for me to be always outside of group, and yeah, that's something I've found comfort in over time. Anyway, this is not like a psychotherapy session with Hung Lee where I'm lying on a couch. We have to take a mini break. This is perfect because we always want to try and do this, folks, just to make sure that we are a conversation starting show and not something that ends the conversation. So what I want us all to do is just take a moment, take your LinkedIn profile URL, share it in the chat stream on Crowdcast. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, which I think something like 80 odd people are, go ahead and share your LinkedIn profile in the LinkedIn comment thread. Then connect with everyone who is also doing the same. And the reason why I want you to do this is so that at the very least, having sort of listened to this conversation and participated in it, you can at least find other people that are interested in this topic, and you can go ahead and continue to have dialogue with those people, even when we have to come off air, which unfortunately is going to be about 10 minutes. So take a moment, go ahead, put your LinkedIn's in there and connect with everyone that you see do that.
Can I just suggest making it slightly easier for the people who are doing this on LinkedIn? They don't actually need to put their profile link in there. Just
they do.
They don't. You can see, you just click on their name and you go to their profile.
You can't actually see each other on LinkedIn, I think. So, I mean, I've actually, if you watch on LinkedIn...
You can't see the thread. Who's commenting on the thread?
Oh, yeah. You can put your name in there, I guess. Just put a thumbnail or something. Is that what you meant?
That's what I meant. All
right, I'll forgive you, mate. That's all right. All right, let's quickly accelerate to mitigation factors. Like, what do we do about it? Is it something is it our problem to solve? As Adam mentioned, this is maybe a social thing. I've intimated maybe it's even like a deeply human thing. Nick, you've also mentioned the social dominance thing. It seems like it's pretty inherent. Is this a problem for recruiters to solve? If it is, what can we do to help? Any thoughts on this?
I think it's getting better. I think over the past couple of years, massively, when I've worked in financial services, I've seen they've stopped kind of doing my investor's son wants a job, has to apply through the same ways, and it kind of brings more social class into the stream. So I think it's getting better. And I think from a recruitment side of things, it's something that you can educate constantly. And that's something that if you keep that at top of your mind,
Yep, I think so. It's getting better. I think we are moving in the right direction. I've got to be honest. It's probably significantly worse than it has been. And there's always been like pockets where it's a bit more recalcitrant. But I think we're just getting more exposure, in my view, is supporting that. So thank you very much, Ashley. How about you? Your thoughts on this, Mel? Is it our problem to solve, and what would you do to kind of move it along?
Yeah, so I don't just think it's our problem to solve, but I think we have a role to play in it. There are a couple of things, and actually some of them we're looking at doing at the moment across our UK and European business. One, we just need to look at all of your selection processes, and can you automate and remove bias in any part of the process? I've got a real think about video interviews. People might have a different opinion, but I think you get this beauty. Adam, I thought it was brilliant when you said beauty bias. I think some people look at what they're seeing on the video interviews, for example, at some points, and they're kind of like, okay, I want to progress that person based on what I'm seeing. And then I think the other thing is really just training people and actually helping some line managers to understand what you're trying to do and why. And some of that might be putting them through some training or getting them to really understand the impact through some lived experience or other things. So,
yep, absolutely. And maybe some basic cultural exchanges internally within a business are going to help. Like, for instance, if you just said, if we did more social things, like off the corporate agenda a little bit, just to get to know each other, that's going to help you break through, because some of those folks are going to be from different parts of the world, different parts of the country, speak in different ways, a bit more community that way.
And even so, we put in an employee resource group last year, which is ethnicity, so clever play on the Nash. And we're really focusing on not just ethnic, but cultural. We start to talk more about the different cultures across our organisation. And I just think that helps people to understand more.
Yep. It's all about education. Education, not through lecturing, by the way. That doesn't help anybody. It's through exposure. Yes. That's the way we do it. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I think the video interview is quite an interesting bias tool built in automatically, irrespective. The MetaView, and I work with Honeit, who's another audio transcription where you take the audio side, you transcribe it, and that's what the hiring manager looks at and sees and hears. But it removes the visual bias that is in. I remember working with one particular North American agency, and I was told if I wanted to go down to the head office, I would need to shave my mustache and my beard off, because they are right-wing Christians who do not believe in having any facial hair. And no one in the headquarters building had any facial. Yeah, we're screwed, man, I tell you.
They thought you were a communist, right? Is that it? Well, they thought you were a communist.
No, they thought I was a heathen or something like that.
You're a pagan, mate. You're a pagan. Get your pagan ass out of here. What is the Church of God? I totally get it. Okay, we've got to keep going. Nick, real quick. Our problem, actually, it is our problem to solve. Let's imagine that. What would you do to help companies solve this problem?
I think from my side, it's that keeping improving. Everything is iterative. You get to keep learning, keep improving. So what are the channels we're using? Are they inclusive? Ask people, do they feel like they can belong in this organization? If not, why not? It could be anything. It could be about gender. It could be about ethnicity. It could be about class or accent. Belonging is a great overarching piece to look at, and look at what you're valuing. Are you, in your job descriptions, your website, when people are looking, is it interdependence or is it independence? Is it collaboration or is it rock star? What are you looking for? And if you're looking for an independent rock star, you're going to not get somebody from a working class background. And I think it's like, sometimes it's accepting that. And I think it's that stuff. Get the feedback, take action, and do it deliberate. We talked about unconscious bias, but there's a load of conscious bias out there as well. And I think we need to accept that.
That's it. Let's focus on the conscious bias. It's like it's a big enough problem for the time being. Nick, we've got a lot of people saying, what were those 2 books and researches that you mentioned? People in LinkedIn are saying this, people on Crowdcast as well. I wonder whether you could either repeat them slowly for us or drag them out from the internet. Chat GPT, where are you? Let's have that.
Cover that. I was going to cover that in the newsletter review.
People want to talk about this. So if you can pull them out, Nick, and stick them into the chat stream, that'd be wonderful. Because I think people found them really valuable. Excellent stuff. Okay, Adam, last one to you. What do we do about it, if anything?
I don't have any solutions. Sorry, I don't mean to sound as if I'm not interested. I'm absolutely interested, but there's other people on this call who know a lot more about it than me, so I'm not going to pretend that I've got any kind of an answer to it.
I think that's absolutely a fair comment. It is one of those that is extremely difficult, but I think I hope that having a conversation like this just helps in some way, because it just exposes us to a lot of information. As people actually commenting, they couldn't believe what they've heard. So it's, a lot of people might actually not understand that this is an issue, or they may think it's more of an isolated issue than it is. So it's great that we're having this chat. So thank you, everyone, for joining us with that. And Nick, thank you for pulling those bits of research out. I'll make sure everyone gets a copy of that. Okay, folks, that's it. Thank you so much for your time. Let me thank our guest, Ashley Wallace. Great to see you. Thank you for joining us. Mel Hayes, great to see you as well. Thank you for joining us. John Rose, great to see you, sir. Thank you for joining. And Nick Court, thanks for kicking it off and inspiring this conversation. It was your post that did it. So thank you for leading the charge that way. Everybody, you have a very good weekend, folks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
The one thing...
That was cool, huh? I thought it was really interesting.
I agree. I thought that was really great. Now, there is one thing, however, that I did want to pull you up on, and that was...
Okay.
Like... When you said earlier, you went to London and, it turned out, you had to, you found out that, damn it, I'm not wearing the right suit, whatever, and all that sort of stuff. How did that happen, given you went to the world's poshest university?
Because it was very much class divided within St Andrews.
Don't tell me you weren't wearing a top hat and tails and stuff like that.
No, wasn't. It was very interesting. In fact, if again, people who came from St Andrews or have gone through that process, small university, East Coast Scotland, but it was very, very divided in, and I was as guilty as being an in-group, out-group person as well as anybody who's from a posher part of the world. But there was a big divide. Never the twain will meet. There was a rare sort of people who I admire to this day that were able to traverse in both of those communities. But I felt that each felt a little bit threatened by the other, and there was this clear separation. It was helped actually by a lot of international students who I think, because of their general ignorance of the class system in the UK, they were able to go through everything. And my good friend Pierre, French guy, he was friends with everybody because he was just French, right? And
a lot of Scandinavians as well, I think.
Yeah, a lot of Scandies, he had no problem with it. A lot of Americans as well, so they helped kind of bridge the gap in some way. But the English working class, British working class, definitely maybe overly conscious, and the upper class, so to speak, I think in some ways they were conscious of it as well, like in a stay away from me type of way. So, but this is how it is, in-group bias, we all love it. This is a human thing we've got to try and deal with in some way, because I understand it to a certain degree, but at the same time, we are all one species. We are all human beings. We all collectively have bigger problems to solve. Like bigger problems. We are on one planet. we've one planet, one species. That's the overarching focus. And, I think, that's where that's my in group. I'm definitely a humanist, right? If you want to call me any kind of ism, I'm a humanist. I'm a speciesist when it comes to humans. I want us to succeed. Only way we do that is we recognize that we're all together. Anyway, listen, mate, that's it. I got to watch the Brazil game. I'm not sure you're interested in football, but Brazil-Croatia's on now. I don't think Croats have got any chance. I've got to be honest. I think Brazil will wipe them out. However, Netherlands versus Argentina tonight, I reckon that's going to be a thriller. That's going to be absolutely massive. And obviously, born in the Netherlands as I am, I've got to go for the Dutch. Let's hope they do over Argentina and break everyone's hearts, because the Messi love, I think, is just getting a bit too much,
Well, I'll tell you what else I think could be an absolute thriller, and it's probably the least fashionable of these quarterfinals, and that's Portugal and Morocco. I think that could be a ding dong.
Yes,
I think it really could.
I'm falling in love with this Moroccan team as well. Their resiliency and their technique is really good. So I've got to say,
they can't play the same against Portugal as they did against Spain.
I would have said they could, but the Portuguese unveiled these new players in their last game, and it was like, oh crap, this is a totally new team now. so it's
here's Ronaldo version 2.
Yeah, kid, imagine that. You make your second game internationally, score a hat-trick and knockouts in the World Cup. Ridiculous, mate.
I know. What a life.
Anyway, listen, mate. Good to see you, Adam. We'll see you next week. Take it easy. Yeah. Cool. All right, wasn't that great, everybody? Thanks for joining. We'll be back next week. And next week, we are going to be talking another hugely important topic on continuing our journey on trying to kind of uncover and expose hidden biases. This one I want us all to pay attention to. It is going to be about the pressures of a mother or a mother-to-be in the job search and on the career track. How do women who are thinking about having kids, what do they go through when they're navigating the world of work? This is something that's totally out of my depth, but I'm thankful I've got a lot of great people who are joining us to have this conversation. Please follow the channel if you're interested in knowing more about that. Register on the show that's happening next week on Friday, and we will see you then. Thanks for watching, everyone.